BBC News with Sue Montgomery. The head of the UN's nuclear watchdog says he's extremely concerned about reported communication difficulties between the Ukrainian regulator and nuclear sites under Russian control. Rafael Grossi said the Ukrainian authorities were having trouble contacting staff at Zaporizhzhia, the biggest nuclear plant in the country. Bethany Bell has more on Mr. Grossi's comments.
He says he's extremely concerned, particularly at two developments. The first development is that the technical operation of the power plant now needs approval from the Russian commander to do anything in terms of management. And that, he says, is something that goes against security standards. The second thing he said he was very worried about is these difficulties and restrictions in communications. There are also restrictions in communications to the Chernobyl site.
The Ukrainian army has been reinforcing the defences of Kiev as the Russian army continues its attempt to break through to the capital. Soldiers have been digging trenches and blocking roads with anti-tank obstacles. Yalda Hakim is in the western city of Lviv.
Ukrainian authorities say towns northwest of the capital Kiev are under relentless bombardment, with intense fighting between government forces and Russian forces. The heaviest fighting is said to be focused on suburbs just 25 kilometers northwest of Kiev. Meanwhile, a new temporary ceasefire to evacuate thousands of civilians in the besieged southern city of Mariupol appears to have collapsed after just 2 hours. This is the second day in a row that it has failed, and the UN says millions of people are trying to flee the fighting that continues in the north, the east and the south of the country.
President Zelensky says the Russians have completely destroyed the airport at Vinnytsia in western Ukraine. Earlier in the day, a military airbase in the west was also hit. He also warned that Russia was preparing to bomb the city of Odessa. Russia's Interior Ministry says more than 3,500 people have been detained for taking part in demonstrations against Russian military action in Ukraine. Here's Danny Eberhard.
Ukraine is not our enemy, they chanted in St. Petersburg, Vladimir Putin's home city. According to one independent human rights monitor, protests took place in about 50 cities, ranging from Vladivostok in the Far East to Rostov-on-Don, one of the southern cities close to Ukraine that's seen a military build-up. In Moscow, several thousand took part, shouting no to war, some even marching below the walls of the Kremlin itself.
World News from the BBC. The social networking service TikTok, the US credit card and payments giant American Express, and the internet streaming service Netflix have become the latest companies to suspend or reduce their operations in Russia. A Netflix spokesman said given the situation in Ukraine, it had decided to suspend services to its million viewers there. Denmark is increasing its defence spending in response to Russia's invasion of Ukraine. The Prime Minister, Mette Frederiksen, said an increase of more than $2.6 billion each year until 2033 was agreed among all the main parties. She said Vladimir Putin's brutal attack on Ukraine heralded a new era in Europe that demanded Denmark's historic response. In other news, the Syrian state news agency says that at least 13 soldiers were killed and 18 wounded in an attack on a military bus in the desert near Palmyra. Sebastian Usher reports.
Syrian state media has given few details on the attack, aside from describing it as terrorism and saying that a variety of weapons were used. No group has yet said it was responsible, but activists monitoring the conflict say it was carried out by the Islamic State group. Though defeated territorially, IS remains active in Syria, especially in the vast desert that stretches from the outskirts of Damascus to the Iraqi border. The group carried out its biggest operation for years in an attempted mass prison breakout in Hasaka in January, although its leader died in a US raid shortly after.
Prosecutors in Mexico have opened an investigation into Saturday's violent clashes between rival football fans, in which 26 people were injured. 3 are in a serious condition. The riots led to the suspension of all matches in Mexico's top football division. Prosecutors believe there were serious flaws in security at the game between Querétaro and the current league champions Atlas. BBC News.